Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, and wondering, is having a partner at this stage of life really making things better? Or is it quietly draining the peace I've worked so hard to build? Maybe you've been there, sharing a home, a routine, even a bed, with someone who no longer brings you joy. Instead of comfort, it's constant compromise. Instead of feeling seen, you feel invisible. You might not say it out loud, but deep down, there's a whisper. Would I be happier on my own? And that whisper, it's not selfish. It's not wrong. It's honest. See, when we were younger, love meant building a life, raising a family, chasing dreams side by side. But now? At 65 and beyond, you've already climbed mountains. You've survived losses, raised children, buried friends, and watched the world change faster than your knees can keep up. At this point, love isn't about fireworks. It's about peace. It's about stillness. It's about feeling safe in your own skin, and sometimes, being in a relationship doesn't give you that anymore. Maybe you've noticed the tension. The way your partner snaps when they're tired. The subtle guilt you feel when you want to go out with friends, or read in silence. The heaviness of their health problems becoming your daily responsibility. And all the while, you wonder, is this really how I want to spend the time I have left? Listen, I know this isn't a popular conversation. Nobody wants to talk about how love can sometimes become a burden in our later years. It sounds cold. It sounds ungrateful. But it's real. And it's happening to more people than you might think. That's why this video matters. Because your peace, your health, your joy, they're worth protecting. You deserve to know that being single doesn't have to mean being lonely. In fact, for many, it's the beginning of healing, rediscovery, and true independence. So today, we're going to unpack 7 powerful, surprising reasons why staying single after 65 might actually be the best decision you ever make. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you won't just be thinking about your relationship differently, you'll be thinking about yourself differently. Stick with me. These aren't surface-level tips. These are eye-opening truths about emotional energy, finances, freedom, and the quiet ways relationships can take more than they give. And I'd love to hear from you as we go. Do you think being single later in life is underrated? Drop a comment below and write "freedom over frustration" if this message speaks to you, or if you're just curious to explore both sides. And if this kind of real, raw conversation feels like something you need more of, subscribe to Elderly Wisdom Guide. This is a space for truth, compassion, and living with intention, especially in the years that matter most. Let's begin. Let's start with something that often goes unspoken: emotional dependency. It's more common than you think. And it's more exhausting than most people will ever admit. Imagine Joan. She's 68. Retired. Finally has time to enjoy the quiet mornings she used to dream about. She's picked up watercolor painting, joined a gardening club, and started walking every evening just to feel the wind again. But Joan has a partner. Someone who, over time, has grown more and more emotionally dependent on her. Every minor worry becomes a crisis. Every quiet moment turns into a long conversation about their fears, their aches, their regrets. Joan finds herself constantly reassuring, comforting, holding space, not just occasionally, but every single day. And little by little, she stops painting. She skips her walks. The gardening club feels like too much. Not because she's busy, but because she's drained. You see, emotional dependency doesn't always look like shouting or dramatic scenes. Often, it looks like one person slowly becoming the emotional anchor for another, absorbing their moods, fixing their worries, calming their storms. And at this stage of life, that takes a real toll. Because let's be honest, as we get older, our emotional energy becomes more limited. It's a precious resource. We've been through enough in life to know that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every burden is ours to carry. But in a relationship where emotional dependency has taken root, there's no space to breathe. You're not just managing your own feelings, you're managing someone else's. Every single day. And here's the trap: many of us were raised to believe that love equals sacrifice. That if someone leans on us emotionally, it's our job to support them, no matter what. We tell ourselves, this is what a good partner does. But at 65 and beyond, that kind of self-sacrifice can quietly rob you of your peace. Because now, peace matters more than ever. You don't need chaos. You don't need to be anyone's emotional life raft. You need stillness. Joy. Moments that feel light and free, not heavy and guilt-ridden. That's why staying single can sometimes be a blessing in disguise. When you're on your own, you get to reclaim your emotional space. You decide who enters your mind and your heart. You don't have to brace yourself for someone else's moods. You can finally be your own safe place. And connection? That doesn't go away. In fact, it becomes more intentional. Instead of being wrapped up in one relationship that drains you, you can spread your energy across meaningful friendships, support groups, church gatherings, hobby circles, places where love flows both ways. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. Solitude can be a sanctuary. So, if you've been feeling like a caregiver to your partner's emotions, like their shadow looms larger than your own life, it's okay to step back. It's okay to ask, is this serving me, or is this shrinking me? And it's okay to choose yourself. Because at this stage of life, you're not here to fix people. You're here to feel free. And it's not just emotions that can leave you drained, money has a way of complicating relationships too. Especially when you're living on a fixed income, trying to enjoy the fruits of a lifetime of hard work. And that brings us to the next point. Let's talk about something most people avoid until it's too late: money. Harold was 70 when he moved in with his longtime partner. They'd been dating for a few years, and everything felt right. Comfortable. Familiar. They shared meals, went to the market together, watched the news over coffee. It all felt like the sweet reward of aging, companionship without the pressure. But then, came the unexpected. She fell ill. Nothing catastrophic at first. Just some medications, follow-ups, dietary changes. But appointments added up. Prescriptions piled on. And slowly, Harold found himself reaching deeper and deeper into his pension to cover things she couldn't. He didn't complain. He didn't want to. But it changed things. The stress crept in. Quiet arguments about money became part of their daily routine. He started cutting corners, skipping his own dental checkups, saying no to trips with friends, even downgrading his groceries. Not because he couldn't afford his life, but because he was now paying for theirs. This is the hard truth: when you're over 65, financial entanglements aren't just inconvenient, they're dangerous. You're likely living on a fixed income. Maybe a pension, maybe Social Security. Maybe some savings that took decades to build. There's no big salary around the corner. There's no, I'll make it back next month. So, when your partner's financial habits, good or bad, become your responsibility, even little things can spiral. Overspending. Medical bills. Poor credit. Family obligations. It adds up, fast. And too often, we walk into these arrangements assuming love will smooth out the wrinkles. That we'll figure it out together. That money is just a practical thing. But love doesn't erase debt. It doesn't cancel out resentment when one person feels the other isn't contributing equally. Money stress can quietly choke a relationship. It can turn affection into frustration. Trust into tension. That's why it's okay, more than okay, to ask the hard questions. Do our financial values match? Will we split costs fairly? Am I protecting what I've worked for? Some seniors choose to keep finances completely separate. Others go further, they choose not to cohabitate at all. Not because they don't love someone, but because they love their peace even more. And that's wise. That's strong. That's forward-thinking. Because your later years should be about freedom, not financial fear. And speaking of fear, money is one thing. But what happens when your freedom is compromised? Now, let's talk about something you may not even realize you're craving: freedom. After his wife passed away, Paul, 74 years old, soft-spoken, and kind, did something unexpected. He pulled out the old paints he hadn't touched in decades. Started dabbling again. The quiet hum of classical music in the background. A brush in hand. Hours would pass, and he wouldn't even notice. He joined a local travel club. Took a train to New Mexico. Ate alone in small cafes. Slept in when he wanted. Woke early when the mood struck. His days were his own, truly his own, for the first time in over 40 years. Then someone came along. Sweet, kind, interested. And everyone said the same thing: "Oh, Paul, it's so good to see you with someone again." But Paul hesitated. Not because he was closed to love, but because he finally understood something: freedom isn't just a phase, it's a privilege. And at his age, he didn't want to give that up lightly. See, when we hit our later years, we often rediscover the parts of ourselves that got buried in the busyness of marriage, work, children, caregiving. We find joy in the simplest things: taking a walk without explaining where we're going, skipping dinner without guilt, reading until midnight without a sigh from the other side of the bed. But relationships, no matter how lovely, require compromise. And compromise, in your 30, might feel like teamwork. But in your 70? It can start to feel like sacrifice. You can't just travel without checking in. You can't just sit in silence without sensing someone else's discomfort. You might have to schedule your doctor appointments around theirs. Relearn patience for someone else's habits. Bend. And here's the mistake many make: we fear being alone more than we fear losing ourselves. But for so many older adults, it's in singleness that they feel most alive. Most creative. Most adventurous. Most them. So, ask yourself, do you miss companionship, or do you miss yourself? Your golden years aren't meant to be a repeat of your past, they're a rebirth. Use this time not for obligation, but for discovery. For joy that doesn't come with a price tag or a "we" when you want it a me. And yes, freedom matters. But there's something else that matters just as much. Something heavier, more hidden, and sadly, more common than people talk about. Emotional abuse. Now, I know what you might be thinking: at our age? Abuse? But listen closely. Tom was 72 when he started to shrink inside his own home. Not physically, but emotionally. His partner, who once made him laugh until he cried, had grown sharp. Every day, she criticized how he ate, how he dressed, how slowly he moved. She cut him down with small jabs, disguised as jokes. Corrected him in public. Dismissed his stories. He stopped inviting friends over. Stopped telling his family what was going on. Because who would believe it? A man in his 70s, being emotionally bullied? But the truth is, abuse doesn't retire. It doesn't go away just because someone's hair turns gray or their bones start to ache. If anything, unhealthy dynamics that were once mild can worsen with age. People become more set in their ways. Less patient. More fearful. And that fear sometimes turns into control, anger, manipulation. Emotional abuse in older couples is real. And it often goes unspoken because of shame, fear of being alone, or the belief that, at my age, should just be grateful someone's here. But that's not love. That's not partnership. That's not how your final chapters should be written. So, if you feel small in your relationship, if your voice trembles before you speak, if you find yourself apologizing for existing, please, hear this. You deserve peace. You deserve respect. You deserve to feel safe. Recognize the red flags. Don't explain them away. Don't shrink to keep the peace. You've lived too long, loved too hard, and lost too much to settle for unkindness now. And even if there's no abuse, sometimes, the stress comes simply from being out of sync. When your partner's energy is miles ahead, or behind, your own. When just trying to keep up becomes its own quiet kind of suffering. Let's talk about something that quietly causes more tension in later life relationships than most people realize: mismatched health or lifestyle differences. Doris is 67. Vibrant, curious, full of energy. She wakes up with the sunrise, loves her morning walks, dances on Fridays, and recently started planning a dream trip to Italy. Her partner, Bill, is 70. Slower these days. Prefers quiet mornings with the TV on. Nap in the afternoon. Same routine. Every day. At first, it seemed like something they could navigate with love. Doris thought, we'll find our rhythm. But slowly, the gap between their energies, between their desires, grew too wide. Doris wanted to move, explore, live. Bill wanted rest, calm, familiarity. She found herself going alone to dances. Canceling trips because he didn't feel up to it. Feeling guilty when she did go without him, and resentful when she stayed home. This is the quiet friction many older couples face. You might both be in your late 60s, even 70s, but your health, stamina, and emotional needs might be miles apart. Maybe you love hiking. They love puzzles. Maybe you want to try new recipes. They want the same dinner every night. Maybe you're just entering a second wind, and they're winding down. And here's the truth: we assume love will keep us in sync. That the same bond that carried us through younger years will carry us through now. But love without compatibility, especially when it comes to lifestyle and health, can feel like you're living in two different worlds under one roof. And there's no shame in that. No one is wrong. No one's to blame. It's just that you've changed. They've changed. Your paths may no longer run side by side, and forcing them to can lead to quiet resentment, lost opportunities, and emotional fatigue. That's why more and more seniors are choosing a different route. Not isolation. Not loneliness. But companionship in community. They find joy with grandchildren, neighbors, book clubs, walking groups. They lean into meaningful connections that don't ask them to shrink, slow down, or apologize for what they still want out of life. Because being partnered doesn't always mean being fulfilled. And being single doesn't always mean being alone. And finally, perhaps the most powerful, yet most overlooked reason to embrace singlehood in your later years: the chance to heal. Truly, deeply, finally, heal. After 2 divorces and a lifetime of emotional detours, Ellen, 66, made a choice. She said, "I needed to hear my own voice again. No background noise. No explaining. No bending. No fixing. Just silence." And in that silence, she began to mend the parts of herself that were always put on hold. The dreams that were interrupted. The confidence that was chipped away. The pain that never got to speak. See, aging isn't just about slowing down. It's about looking back. Reflecting. Making peace with where you've been. And deciding, intentionally, how you want to feel, not just live, in the years you still have. But that kind of deep emotional work? It often needs space. Stillness. Time alone. Yet too many of us try to rush into the arms of another person, thinking they'll complete us. Thinking they'll fix the loneliness. Distract us from the ache. But distraction isn't healing. And comfort isn't always clarity. And you'd be surprised how many seniors, men and women alike, report greater emotional stability, lower stress, and more peace once they've stepped away from romantic relationships. Not because love failed them, but because they finally gave themselves the permission to feel whole on their own. This chapter of your life doesn't need noise. It doesn't need chaos. It needs clarity. So, ask yourself, what do I need now? Not what you needed at 30. Not what others expect. But you, in your own words, in your own soul, now. Let yourself be whole without the need to be part of something else. And as we come to the close of these 7 reasons, let's take a moment to bring it all together, because what we've uncovered today is more than just a list. It's a mirror. It's not easy to admit that love, especially at this stage of life, might come with more hardship than happiness. For decades, we were taught that having a partner meant safety. That being in a relationship meant you were cared for, complete, even successful. And that growing old alone was something to fear. But now, at this chapter, you might be realizing something very different. Maybe love feels heavier. Maybe connection feels complicated. Maybe being part of a couple no longer brings the comfort it once did. That's not failure. That's clarity. And the truth is, you've changed. Your needs, your energy, your values, they've evolved. What once felt romantic might now feel restrictive. What once felt secure might now feel suffocating. And that's okay. Because being single now, it doesn't mean being abandoned. Or unloved. Or forgotten. It means choosing yourself, fully, boldly, without apology. It means waking up without walking on eggshells. It means taking a quiet morning walk because you want to, not because it fits someone else's plan. It means reading the books you love, making the meals you enjoy, traveling where your heart takes you. Being single now means choosing your peace, your passions, your path, without having to filter them through someone else's lens. And if you've been sitting with that question, wondering if you should stay, if you should leave, or if you should even start something new in this stage of life, take a pause. Listen. Go for a walk in silence. Write down what's on your heart. Talk to someone you trust. Sit with your feelings, not in judgment, but in compassion. Because your soul already knows what it needs. It's just waiting for you to listen. You've earned this time. You've walked through fire and change and sacrifice. Now, this chapter, it belongs to you. Your final chapters deserve clarity, not compromise. Joy, not just duty. Stillness, not stress. Wholeness, not another piece to fit into someone else's puzzle. And whether you choose to walk this path beside someone, or on your own, you deserve peace. Let's take a moment to briefly reflect on what we've covered. We explored 7 powerful reasons why staying single after 65 might not just be a viable choice, but a deeply fulfilling one. From protecting your emotional bandwidth, to maintaining financial independence, avoiding caregiver burnout, preserving personal freedom, respecting differing health journeys, and ultimately, giving yourself the space to heal. Each of these points leads to one truth: you matter. Your well-being matters. So now I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? Can being single after 65 actually be a blessing in disguise? Have you experienced this kind of transformation, or are you just starting to consider it? Drop a comment below. Share your story. Someone out there might need to hear that they're not alone in thinking this way. And if this video touched something deep inside you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel a little less alone, go ahead and tap that like button. It helps others find their way here too. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. This is Elderly Wisdom Guide, your space for thoughtful conversations, emotional clarity, and honest truths about aging with grace and purpose. Hit that subscribe button if you'd like to join us for more empowering content like this. We're building a community where your experience is valued, your wisdom is honored, and your voice matters. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Remember, your wisdom is your strength. Your peace is your power. And your life is yours to live, fully and freely. Until next time, stay wise, stay strong, and keep living life on your terms.